Next up, I'm going to show us some safe handgun techniques, such as safely unloading a firearm, and I'll show you how to load one. Since we just looked at semi-automatics, let's continue with this Glock 19. Unloading a semi-automatic is a relatively simple process, but you'd be surprised how often the critical steps are missed and unnecessary danger is created. In this section, we'll go over the process you should follow to ensure your pistol is safely unloaded. Before we begin, just take a quick moment to note that we're using snap caps and our firearm is clear and safe. First, while keeping the firearm pointed in a safe direction, you should remove the magazine. This is accomplished by simply pressing the magazine release button here and guiding the magazine out of the magazine well. You don't want to lose your magazine, so place it somewhere visible but away from your gun. At this point, your gun is still not considered safe, since there still may be a round in the chamber. We always treat firearms as if they're loaded, no matter what. At all points during the unloading and loading of a firearm, always keep your finger off the trigger. After you've removed the magazine and placed it away from your firearm, the slide should be pulled rearward and locked into position using the slide lock lever, which is here. I'll do it slowly so you can see how it's done. Now let's discuss locking the slide to the rear, but in a little bit more detail. Now I'm a big guy and I've done this several thousand times, but it's important to go over the process slowly. So, keeping the gun pointed in a safe direction with my finger off the trigger, I'm taking a firm grip on the grip portion, and with my left hand I'm coming over the top of the slide, ensuring that my fingers aren't in the ejection port here, because that can seriously hurt. I'm pulling back with my left hand on the slide and keeping my right hand locked in position. While I'm pulling the slide rearward with my left hand, I push the slide lock lever up. This way, the slide will be locked backwards. It will take you a few tries if you're new to this, so we recommend you practice this with an unloaded firearm with unloaded magazines far away. So this becomes easy and it's a fluid series of steps. This becomes a lot easier with practice. Once the slide has been locked to the rear and the chamber of the barrel should be clearly in view, simply rotate the gun, still pointed in a safe direction, so you can see the inside of the chamber. At this point, perform both a visual and physical inspection of the chamber to ensure no cartridge is still in there, and then carefully place your finger in the chamber to feel there is not a round in the chamber. This picture will show you what an unloaded chamber looks like, and for demonstration purposes, here's another picture of what a snap cap in the chamber will show you as a loaded chamber. Visually inspect the well and stick a finger in there to make sure there's no stray rounds inside. If there are, remove them and place them safely away from the firearm.
To load a firearm, you perform most of the basic same steps, but in reverse. You start by loading a magazine. To do this, first determine what is the front and back of your magazine. You can do this by rotating around until you see markings on one side. This is going to be the back. You can also tell by the angle of the magazine itself. It'll typically slant in the direction that is the front of it. This magazine here is angled to the right, and accordingly, this right side, your left, is the front, and that's where you want your cartridges / bullets to face, with the bullet itself being an easy reference point facing towards the front of the magazine. Using a firm grip with your non-dominant hand, in this case, my left hand, take a cartridge with your dominant hand and press it downwards and rearwards into the follower, that's this top section, until the round presses against the back of the magazine. Continue to load rounds like this until you have the desired number of rounds in your magazine or your magazine is full. You can typically tell your magazine is full because the spring tension in the magazine increases until you can't put any more rounds in. Pretty simple, right? Now you have a loaded magazine. The next step is to pick up your firearm, keeping it pointed in a safe direction with your finger off the trigger with your dominant hand. Get a good firm grip on it. Carefully guide the front of the magazine so the rounds are pointed in the same direction as the front of your gun, which you may remember is typically referred to as the muzzle. I like to use my finger to help index the magazine into the magazine well. Press the magazine firmly into the magazine well. You'll typically hear a click at this point. If you're at the range or in a noisy environment where this isn't possible, that's fine. Regardless of environment, give the bottom of your magazine a firm tap to ensure it's properly in place. You can double check by gently pulling down to see if the magazine comes loose. If it does, give it a good firm tap to lock it into place. So to show you this again, cartridge is pointed forward, front of your gun, muzzle. Use your index finger, guide it into the magazine well, good firm click, tap, and at this point, you would simply press the slide lock lever, and now your gun would be ready to fire. At this point, your firearm with its slide locked to the rear and a magazine firmly seated or in place. You have two options here. First, you can simply use your finger, my thumb, to press the slide release lever downwards. That releases the slide forward and chambers around. Since this Glock does not have an external safety to flick upwards or press, if this were live ammunition, this gun would now be ready to fire. To show you the other option, I'll lock the slide to the rear again, taking the magazine out first, and using the method Brian showed us. I will lock it into place and perform a physical inspection to ensure there isn't a round in the chamber, since we had just chambered a round in the last demonstration. Now, even though I know this gun is safe, and because we always treat firearms as if they're loaded, I've double checked just to be safe. This is what the second method looks like. Guide the magazine into the magazine well, press it firmly, tap it into place to ensure it's correctly seated by pulling down, giving another firm tap. And there we go. At this point, if you don't want to use the slide lock lever, you can come over the top of the gun, keeping it pointed in a safe direction where there isn't anything I'm willing to destroy. Keeping my finger off the trigger and out of the trigger guard, you pull rearwards on the slide. Even though it's locked back, you can pull it a little bit more, then release it immediately. By pulling the slide backwards, we're creating a little extra spring tension, relieving the slide lock lever, and using internal springs to return the gun to a ready-to-fire state. It's very important when using this method to not ride the slide forward, meaning keeping your hand on the slide as it's traveling forward. Almost 100% of the time in movies, the actor or actress will slide forward, keeping their hand on the slide. That's absolutely not the way to do it, and will often result in the gun malfunctioning. The reason you don't keep your hand on the slide is you're changing the internal spring tension, which you don't want to do. So, this is good. That is bad. And one more time, all the way back, release. Your gun is now ready to fire.
For the next few minutes, we'll be using snap caps specifically designed for revolvers. This is a snap cap that mimics a .38 Special, which is different from a snap cap that is made for a 9mm.
Unloading a revolver is a simple process. To begin, simply press the cylinder release button here, and then swing the cylinder away from the frame by gently pressing on the side of it. Tilting the revolver upward with the cylinder to the side, press the ejector rod here. This should cause the casings or rounds to fall freely from the cylinder. You should then press the ejector rod a few times if the casings are unused and don't easily come out the first time. Look inside the cylinder and ensure there's nothing inside. Visual inspection of each chamber of the cylinder is important. At this point, this revolver is now safely unloaded.
To load a revolver, we're doing the same in reverse. Let's lock this one back in place and get started. First, we're going to press the cylinder release button. Gently press the cylinder to swing it away from the frame. Keep it pointed in a safe direction at all times, with your finger off the trigger and out of the trigger guard. Angle it slightly downwards and begin to load rounds. As we previously covered, revolvers have a visual indicator on them to show you what direction the chamber is going to rotate as you fire it. It's important in case only you wanted to load 2 rounds. Here, we'll load 2 rounds, and using the indicator to tell me the cylinder will either rotate in a clockwise or counterclockwise fashion. Last but not least, and as a little bonus, keeping in the vein of the whole "they do it wrong on TV and the movies" thing, don't go all Wild West and spin the chamber, then slam it shut. Revolvers have little notches that match up with the cylinder stop hands. Don't worry about that terminology for now, but spinning and slamming the chamber shut will and can cause dents that cause malfunctions. Since we were just talking about cylinder stop hands and your brain probably hurts a little, let's zoom back and talk about the safe storage of firearms and ammunition.